Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. In the golden haze of our early years, Emily and I were inseparable. Our love was the kind that people write novels about, passionate, deep, and filled with endless conversations under the starlit sky. We met in college, two young souls with eyes full of dreams. She was studying art, and I, ever the pragmatic one, was buried in business books. But our differences only fueled our attraction. I remember our first date like it was yesterday. We had gone to a little Italian bistro downtown. She wore a red dress, and I, in my awkward attempt at dressing up, had donned a tie, which she playfully adjusted all night. We talked about everything, our hopes, our fears, the future we envisioned. I was mesmerized by her laughter, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about painting. Life's too short for dull colors and dreary days, she had said, her hand gently brushing mine. That touch sent a jolt through me, a feeling I had never experienced before. As we walked back, the night draped around us, I took a chance and held her hand. Her fingers laced with mine, fitting perfectly. We stopped under a lamppost, the light casting a glow around her. Leaning in, I kissed her for the first time. It was a kiss that seemed to stop time, sealing a bond one believed was unbreakable. Years passed, and we got married right after graduation in a quaint chapel by the sea. Our life started blissfully. We moved into a small but cozy apartment, decorating it with thrift store finds and Emily's vibrant paintings. Our evenings were spent cooking together or cuddling up to watch old movies. But gradually, the perfect picture started to blur. I got a job at a marketing firm, which demanded long hours and often weekends. Emily took up a part-time job at a local art gallery, but her dream of becoming a renowned artist remained just that, a dream. One evening, I came home late to find Emily sitting in the dark, her silhouette outlined by the moonlight streaming through the window. "You're late again," she said, her voice a mixture of sadness and irritation. "I know. I'm sorry. Work is just—" I started, but she cut me off. "You're always sorry, aren't you? But it's always about your work, your deadlines. What about us?" I walked over, trying to hug her, but she pulled away. "Emily, you know this job is important. We've talked about this. It's for our future." She stood up, pacing the room. "And what about our present, huh? You're missing out on that." Her words stung. I wanted to explain, to tell her how much I was trying for us. But before I could say anything, she stormed off to bed. Nights like these became more frequent. Our conversations turned into arguments, her laughter replaced by bitter remarks. Emily's once warm and loving demeanor shifted into coldness and resentment. I couldn't understand when or how we started drifting apart. I found solace in my work, often burying myself in it to avoid the growing tension at home. Emily, on the other hand, became increasingly involved in the art gallery, often staying late for events and meetings. Then came the day that changed everything. I was at work, poring over reports, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our shared cloud account, a video upload. Curious, I opened it, expecting to see one of Emily's gallery events. But it wasn't. My heart raced as I watched the video. It was Emily, but not the Emily I knew. She was with another man, an ex-boyfriend from her past. They were in what looked like a hotel room, laughing, their body language intimate and familiar. The world around me crumbled. The video was like a dagger through my heart. In that moment, everything changed. My Emily, my love, my world. Was it all a lie? I sat there, frozen, the phone slipping through my numb fingers. The realization hit me hard. I didn't know the woman I married anymore. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. Not yet. I needed time to process, to understand. But as each day passed, the facade we lived became harder to maintain. And I knew the storm that was brewing would soon break. Days turned into weeks since I discovered the video. I walked around in a daze, the image of Emily with another man haunting my every thought. Work became my only refuge, a place where I could drown my thoughts in a sea of numbers and meetings. At home, Emily and I moved around each other like ghosts, our conversations brief and filled with unspoken accusations. One evening, I returned home earlier than usual. The sound of laughter greeted me, a sound I realized I hadn't heard in our home for months. My heart leaped for a moment, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was a sign of better things. But as I stepped inside, the scene before me crushed any such hopes. Emily was on a video call, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. My entrance went unnoticed as I stood there, watching her. She was glowing, her eyes shining with a mirth that was once reserved for me. "Oh, stop it. You're going to make me blush," she giggled to the person on the other end. A pang of jealousy shot through me. Clearing my throat, I announced my presence. She turned abruptly, her smile vanishing as she met my eyes. "I have to go," she muttered to the person on the call and quickly hung up. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just an old friend from the gallery," she replied nonchalantly, but her eyes darted away, avoiding mine. "Seems like you were having fun," I commented, the bitterness evident in my tone. Emily's eyes flashed with a sudden anger. "So what? Am I not allowed to have fun anymore? God knows there's no joy in this house lately, especially not with you." Her words stung, and I struggled to form a reply. Before I could say anything, she stormed off to our bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The distance between us grew with each passing day. Emily's late nights at the gallery became more frequent, and she often returned home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Whenever I questioned her about her evenings, she'd snap at me, accusing me of being controlling and paranoid. "You're suffocating me with your insecurities," she yelled one night after I asked her why she came home at 2 a.m. "Can't a woman have some space without being interrogated?" Her words left me reeling. Was I being unreasonable? Was my presence smothering her? Doubt clouded my thoughts, mixing with the hurt and betrayal, forming a toxic cocktail that I couldn't swallow. Then, one Saturday, as I was cleaning the house, I found a receipt for a hotel room tucked away in her purse. My hand shook as I held it, the date and time glaring back at me. It was the same day she had told me she was going to an all-day art workshop. The evidence was there, staring me in the face, yet a part of me still wanted to believe there was some explanation, any explanation other than the obvious. I decided to confront her. That evening, as she walked through the door, I was waiting for her in the living room, the receipt in hand. "What is this, Emily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She glanced at the receipt and then back at me, her expression unreadable. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was icy, devoid of emotion. "Answer me." My voice rose, a mix of anger and desperation. "Were you at this hotel?" For a moment, there was silence, the tension between us thick. Then, with a cold laugh, she said, "What if I was? What are you going to do about it?" Her response hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, wordless, as she walked past me to our room, closing the door with a definitive thud. The walls of our home, once filled with love and laughter, now echoed with the sound of our crumbling marriage. As I stood alone in the living room, the realization that I was losing my wife, my love, to a stranger's embrace was a bitter pill. But it was a pill I was forced to swallow as I grappled with the eroding foundation of our life together. The storm was no longer just brewing. It was upon us, threatening to wash away all that we had built. The tension in our house had become almost tangible, a thick fog of unspoken words and suspicions. Sleep eluded me night after night as I replayed Emily's dismissive laughter and cold words. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and hurt, but amidst the chaos, one clear thought emerged: I couldn't live like this any longer. My patience, worn thin by weeks of torment, finally snapped. The next day at work, I was a shell of my usual self, mechanically going through the motions, my thoughts consumed by the unfolding drama at home. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to see Emily, to confront her in this agonizing situation head-on. I left the office, driven by a mix of dread and determination, and headed home. But halfway there, a gut feeling stopped me. Instead, I diverted my car towards the art gallery where Emily worked. The familiar gnawing in my stomach intensified as I parked nearby and walked the remaining distance on foot, my heart pounding in my chest. The gallery was bustling with visitors. I scanned the room and found Emily, laughing and chatting animatedly with a man. My blood boiled at the sight. It was him, the man from the video. They were standing a little too close, their body language intimate and familiar. Without thinking, I strode up to them, my anger boiling over. "Emily!" I barked, louder than I intended. Both Emily and the man turned, startled. Emily's face paled upon seeing me. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "We need to talk." "Now," I demanded, my voice hard. The man, sensing the tension, introduced himself with an outstretched hand. "I'm Mark, a friend of—" "I know exactly who you are," I cut him off, not taking his hand. My eyes were fixed on Emily, burning with questions and accusations. Emily tried to steer me away, her voice a harsh whisper. "Not here, please. Let's go somewhere else." But I was beyond reason. "No, we'll talk right here." "Are you sleeping with him, Emily? Is he the reason our marriage is falling apart?" The room fell silent. The air was thick with tension, every eye in the gallery on us. Mark looked between us, confused and embarrassed. Are you out of your mind? Emily's voice was a mix of anger and shock. How dare you come here and make a scene? How dare I? I laughed bitterly. I think I have every right to know why my wife is in a hotel with another man. Why she lies and sneaks around. Emily's face flushed with anger. You're smothering me. You're always doubting me, questioning me. I can't even breathe. That's not an answer, Emily. Are you having an affair with him? I pressed, each word laced with a cocktail of pain and betrayal. Mark, who had been silent, finally spoke up. Hey, man, I think you've got the wrong idea. Stay out of this. I snapped, my fist clenched at my sides. The urge to strike him was overwhelming, but I restrained myself, my focus solely on Emily. Emily shook her head in disbelief. This is ridiculous. I can't do this anymore. She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm, desperate for answers. Don't walk away from me, I pleaded, my voice breaking. She jerked her arm free. Let go of me. You're hurting me, she cried out, tears starting to form in her eyes. The gallery manager hurried over, a look of concern on his face. Is everything okay here? He asked cautiously. No, it's not okay, I shouted, my emotions spiraling out of control. My wife is cheating on me, and everyone needs to know the kind of person she is. Emily's expression hardened, and she turned to the manager. I'm so sorry about this. Please, can you ask him to leave? The manager eyed me warily. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Feeling defeated and humiliated, I turned and walked out of the gallery, the weight of 100 stairs on my back. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to cool my burning rage and heartache. I walked aimlessly, the events at the gallery replaying in my mind. My confrontation with Emily had solved nothing. If anything, it made things worse. I was lost in a sea of emotions with no land in sight. The storm that I had been dreading had finally broken, its fury unleashed in the most public and humiliating way possible. But the worst part was, I still had no answers, just more questions and an overwhelming sense of despair about the future of my marriage. After the gallery incident, my life felt like a ship caught in a relentless storm, being thrown around by waves of anger, hurt, and confusion. Emily and I were like strangers in our own home, speaking only when necessary, and even then, our words were laced with venom. One night, I was rummaging through the attic, searching for some old tax documents, when I stumbled upon a box of our old love letters and photos. As I sifted through them, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, a stark contrast to the bitter coldness that had seeped into our marriage. My hands trembled as I read a letter from Emily, dated back to our first anniversary. Her words of love and promises of forever seemed like a cruel joke now. Lost in the memories, I didn't hear Emily come up the attic stairs. What are you doing with those? Her voice, sharp and accusing, jolted me back to reality. I looked up, clutching a photo of us smiling, happier times. Just remembering the good days. The days when you actually loved me. Her expression flickered with something that looked like pain, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Those days are gone because of you, because you couldn't just trust me. Trust you? I laughed bitterly, standing up to face her. How can I trust a woman who lies and cheats? I did not cheat on you. Emily's voice rose, her eyes blazing. You drove me to it with your constant working, your neglect, and your accusations. So, it's my fault? I work to provide for us, to give you the life you always wanted, and this is how you repay me? I could feel the rage building up inside me like a raging inferno. Providing for us? You mean ignoring me, pushing me away into someone else's arms? Her retort cut through me, deep and sharp. Into his arms? I shot back, my voice dripping with scorn. You mean your longtime ex? The one you were in a hotel room with? The one you've been laughing and flirting with behind my back? Her face turned red, a mixture of anger and guilt. Yes, him. He listens to me, understands me, something you haven't done in years. The room grew silent, the air thick with unsaid words and buried pain. We stared at each other, the years of love and dreams dissipating into a haze of betrayal and hurt. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking voice. Why didn't you just tell me you were unhappy? Why didn't you just leave instead of betraying me like this? Tears began to stream down Emily's face, her voice breaking. Because I was scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of losing the life we had built. And what about me? What about my feelings? I was nearly shouting now, my own tears threatening to spill. I loved you, Emily, more than anything. I would have done anything for you. She wiped her tears, her voice a mere whisper. I know, and I'm sorry, but it's too late now. We've destroyed each other. The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. We had indeed destroyed each other, our love crumbling under the weight of secrets, lies, and betrayal. The pain in my heart was so intense, it was almost physical. I realized then that the woman standing in front of me was no longer the Emily I fell in love with. The attic, once a place filled with cherished memories, now felt like a mausoleum holding the remnants of our dead love. We stood there, amidst the ruins of our relationship, two broken souls unable to find their way back to each other. As Emily turned to leave the attic, I knew this was the end. The end of us, the end of everything we had ever been to each other. The unraveled threads of our marriage lay scattered, beyond repair. The hurt, the pain, the betrayal, it had all spilled out in a chaotic dance of emotions, leaving us both broken and devastated. In the aftermath of our attic confrontation, the house felt like a tomb, cold and silent. The distance between Emily and me grew wider, an unbridgeable chasm filled with resentment and pain. Neither of us dared to broach the subject of divorce, but it loomed over us like a dark, inevitable cloud. A few days later, I was at work, mindlessly staring at my computer screen, when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "We need to talk. Tonight. About us." I read the message several times, each word sinking in like a stone in water. The finality of it left me feeling hollow. I knew what the conversation would entail, and part of me was relieved that the end was near, but another part mourned the loss of what we once had. That evening, as I parked the car in our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked outside our house. A sense of unease crept over me. I walked in to find Emily sitting in the living room, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Beside her sat a man in a suit, a somber expression on his face. "This is Mr. Henderson, a divorce attorney," Emily said, her voice steady but low. I nodded at Mr. Henderson, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "I see." Emily's voice quivered as she spoke. "I think it's clear that we can't go on like this. We're only hurting each other more." "I agree," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "It's better to end things now before we destroy what little good is left between us." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "If it's amicable, we can settle this quickly and without unnecessary complications. I suggest we go over the division of assets, alimony, and any other pertinent matters now." The next hour was a surreal experience. We discussed bank accounts, property, and even who would get our dog, Max. It was like negotiating a business deal, except the business was our failed marriage. With each signed document, a piece of my heart chipped away. As Mr. Henderson packed his papers, he gave us a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry you two are going through this. If you have any questions or need further assistance, feel free to contact me." After he left, there was a deafening silence. Emily looked at me, her eyes searching for something I couldn't identify. "I never wanted it to end like this," she whispered. "Neither did I replied, the enormity of our decision finally sinking in. "But maybe it's for the best. Maybe we can find happiness separately. Do you think we could ever?" Her voice trailed off, the question hanging in the air. "Be friends?" I finished for her. I pondered for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe with time, we can forgive each other." She nodded slowly, tears welling up again. "I truly am sorry for everything." I wanted to say something comforting, to ease her pain and mine, but no words came. Instead, I stood up, feeling an urgent need to leave, to breathe, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the house. "I should go," I murmured, heading towards the door. "Will I see you again?" she asked, a note of desperation in her voice. "Yeah, we'll see each other." To finalize everything. I didn't turn back, couldn't turn back. I walked out the door, feeling the cool night air against my skin. Driving aimlessly, I ended up at a park where Emily and I used to go in happier times. I sat on a bench, staring at the stars, reflecting on everything that had happened. Our love, which had burned so brightly in the beginning, was now just a pile of ashes. But from ashes, new beginnings can arise. The pain of betrayal and the agony of loss were still raw, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for a new dawn in my life. A life where I could rebuild and find happiness on my own terms. As the night deepened, I realized that our story had ended, but my story was still being written. And with the rising of the sun, I would start anew, one step at a time.